I'm no longer a slave to fear.
Real Cuff Radio is about to begin.
I am a child of God. I'm no
Everybody
longer
loves a
a
hero.
slave to fear.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
I am a child.
This afternoon, we will be interviewing the owners and operators of Della, Vineyards and Winery. Stay tuned for the show. Welcome to Real Cup Radio. And this evening, we have the owner and operator of award-winning winery and vineyard called Della, and his name is Dr. Don Clark. Dr. Don Clark, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Todd. Our winery, actually our business is called Villa della Pace. It means Valley of the Peace in Italian, and so we can talk a little bit about how we got started with that, and we can talk a little bit about how I came to know the Lord in the first place.
Let's start with that first, and then we will go into the winery, which I'm excited about because there's so many scriptures. First of all, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine, and then we also know that we're heading for a wedding. And so, so if you'll start and share your testimony, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, very good. Like I briefly mentioned, I actually received the Lord when I was 35 years old. I'm a scientist by training. I got my PhD in physical biochemistry, and before I received the Lord, I had the evolutionary story pretty much down pat. I could talk to you about it from the Big Bang up into biology itself. Now, after I received the Lord at 35, and it was a non-denominational church out in California. My wife had started going back to church, and she invited me, of course, several times. The church was praying for me. She was attending a small group. They were praying for me. And I decided, we had one child, or a couple of children, actually, by that time. And my oldest child started saying, "Hey, Dad, why don't you go to church?" And I really didn't have an answer for that. Other than, I was an agnostic at the time. I wouldn't say that I was an atheist, but I was certainly agnostic. Anyway, I got the opportunity to go at the Easter service, or the resurrection service, with this church out in California, and it was quite different from what I had been brought up as. I was raised a Catholic. But when I left home to go to college, I pretty much didn't go to church anymore at all. So I didn't really have a strong inkling for the Catholic faith. And but this non-denominational church, Bible-teaching church, was kind of appealing. But I actually didn't go back to church until the Christmas service. Of course, my wife would invite me every week to go to church with her, but I didn't until the Christmas service. And at the Christmas service, I felt like the pastor, like many of us who come to the Lord, felt like the pastor was talking specifically to me. So when he gave the altar call, when he gave the invitation, I was one of the first to raise my hand, and I accepted the Lord at that time, at that service. But I still had a lot of questions and a lot of doubts. I mean, one moment I'd be saying, yes, Jesus is real, this is all real. And another moment I would be saying that no, this can't be real. It's not real. So I had pretty much a battle going on, in my mind for about 3 months. And then I started listening to pastors teaching out in California at that time. There were a lot of pastors who were on the radio, and Chuck Swindoll, Chuck Smith, Chuck Missler, Raoul, a lot of different types of teaching pastors, many of them from the Calvary Chapel Church. And they would just go line by line, precept by precept, through the Bible, and I was growing in my belief, through that time. Well, by the time Easter came along, the resurrection service came along. I was in the choir, and I remember singing a solo at the Easter service, and my family and I were in part of the play production that they also put on, for that Easter service. So that was pretty much a year after the first time I had gone to this church. And then from that point on, I was constantly listening to Bible teachers on the radio. I was going to Wednesday Bible study at the church Sunday morning, and then we would go Sunday evening, and I was participating in the home group. So I was being discipled quite heavily in the early years of my conversion to receive Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
So how did you, it sounds like you were still, on one side of the fence or the other. How did you come where this is not a Big Bang Theory anymore?
Oh, actually, one of the commentaries that I started reading, the Bible from page 1, Genesis 1, 1. And as I was reading a commentary on the Genesis record by Henry Morris, who was a young Earth creationist, I'm reading the commentary. This is the only way it could possibly have happened. And I mean, literally, when I received the Lord, the scales began to fall. The scales of unbelief, began to fall off my eyes. And at that point, I turned from being an evolutionist to a young Earth creationist, and have been a young Earth creationist from that time onward. And I've given creation talks in churches and in schools, and creation presentations. I was fortunate to about 3-4 years ago, actually, to go to Russia and teach creation in some of the churches in Siberia, as well as 2 of the universities, and which were very well received. I mean, here's folks where you think of Russia being totally either agnostic or atheist, and yet I'm teaching about how one of the presentations that I gave was about the Ice Age, and how the Ice Age could have only taken place if there was a global flood event. So I'm going through this with folks, and they're just, of course, there was translation issues, but it was amazing that they were really, really appreciative that someone was coming with information that appeared to be more truthful than the information that they were receiving in school. And I actually found more readiness to hear the word and to hear true science over there than I've had opportunities over here. So it was absolutely amazing, the transformation that not only took place in my heart, but the transformation that takes place in other folks' hearts when they hear the truth.
I can see that, especially with Russia, because when I was over in Russia as a missionary, they were very hungry. They just, they really wanted to hear something. So, okay, so then you've gotten involved in an organization with Rebecca Pratt?
Oh, well, yes. We actually moved from California in the late 80s. And I worked with a startup biotechnology company in the Woodlands or near the Houston, Texas area. Worked with them for about 5 years, and then I just felt the Lord just pulling me into missions. I mean, it was like, hey, I have no desire to do what I'm doing anymore. I mean, the Lord just completely took that away from me. And we had an opportunity, I guess, in 2000 to begin to even contemplate the idea that, hey, maybe we can go into full-time missions. And indeed, the door seemed to be opening, and Andre and I attended a Campus Crusade for Life conference that was out in Florida. And at that conference, I'm really being convicted that now is the time to go into full-time missions. And so we started asking around if folks retired folks. We weren't retired at the time, but folks coming out of industry, for example, was there a place for us? And we wound up meeting Don Stevens with Mercy Ships, and from that conversation and other subsequent conversations, they wanted me, and we said, yeah, this seems to be a good fit. So by September of 2000, we had moved up here to join Mercy Ships, and we did a Crossroads. We did the 5-month Crossroads program where there's 3 months of discipleship and 2 months in the field. And that was the last Crossroads that Mercy Ships had because we're going through some organizational changes, and one of the reasons why they kind of brought me on was to help with the organization changes. So once we got finished with our Crossroads in 2001, we were a full-time staff with Mercy Ships. I was one of the vice presidents in charge of the operation of the base here in Garden Valley, and so we worked with Mercy Ships for about 5 years, and then the Lord kind of let us out of that, and I helped start up another organization because of our relationship with some of the folks at Mercy Ships. With Tim and Rebecca Pratt, who had a desire to help orphans help rescue orphans, basically, in Liberia and subsequently in Benin, West Africa. And so I said, well, I'll help you guys start the organization. I'll do all the business side of the organization and the financial, accountability side. And you guys, raise funds, and we'll see where it's at in about a year, and if it's going, then I'll start another 501c3, and with your ministry. And they said, okay, yeah, that sounds good. So we did that, and it became clear that Orphan Relief and Rescue had to be its own ministry, so we kind of peeled it off of the ministry, the small ministry I was working with at the time, Sharing International, and I formed another 501c3 and kind of launched Orphan Relief and Rescue from our property here in Garden Valley, and they continue to grow year after year after year, and then finally they said, look, our parents are getting old. We want to be near them. They were from the Seattle area, and so we want to move the organization from here in Texas to Seattle. And I said, well, we'll pray about it and see if we're to move with you. And the conclusions of that was, yes, we're to help them get started in Seattle. So that's what we did. In July of 2010, we moved the whole organization into big U-Haul trucks over to Seattle in the Burien area, and I did all the paperwork necessary to get the organization registered in the state of Washington, and we started the organization there. We picked up and got the organization going. And it began to flourish even more in Seattle. And then after that point, we said, well, we still had one of our daughters living here on our property, and we said, well, let's take a vacation. Let's go back home. Because she and her husband and son were moving back to Australia, where her husband was from. And so we said, well, before they do that, we want to spend some time with them. So we took a vacation in July of 2011, and on our way back over here, we stopped off at IHOP, International House of Prayer in Kansas City, and we went to the Fascinate conference. We had two of our children with us, and Andrea and I thought that this would be a great thing, for our kids to be involved with, and to go to the conference and hear some very, worshipful music and hear some good speakers and get inspired, about God. Well, we got to the conference, and my two kids were not getting into it. However, I was, whenever the worship team got up to play and to worship the Lord, I was in tears. I mean, the Holy Spirit was just, pouring out on me. And, it was obviously a conference for me and for my wife as opposed to my kids at that time. So that was about, I guess it's about a 3 or 4 day conference. And then from there we come straight here, and the first thing that happened when we got here was I'm walking around our property, and I hear the Lord say, I release you. And I'm saying, what? And he says, yeah, I release you from your responsibilities with Orphan Relief and Rescue. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And I knew this was going to be tough for the co-founders of the ministry, because they relied heavily on me for the business side of the ministry. And so anyway, I said, okay, yeah, all right, we'll look into that, and we'll pray about that. And both my wife and I felt that, yes, okay, this is what we're to do. And so the next day I'm walking around the property, and I hear Vineyard. And, I'm asking the Lord, Vineyard, you want us to start a vineyard. And we have 17 acres here in Garden Valley. And not that all of it is usable for a vineyard, but, and I had absolutely no inclination or desire necessarily to start a vineyard. So we got confirmation that this is indeed what the Lord wanted us to do. And so by the end of that week, so the first day was like Monday, when I heard I release you. The second day was Tuesday when I heard vineyard, and by Sunday of that week, I had pretty much scheduled or had a fellow out who installs vineyards, and he wasn't but 20 miles away. Come out, check our soil, check our water, and then we, proceeded to work on contracts to actually install the vineyard. So by Thanksgiving of that year, which was 2011, our vineyard was installed, at least most of it. And so it was like, okay, gee, what have we gotten ourselves into? We knew nothing about agriculture per se, and certainly nothing about starting a vineyard, and or having vines, or anything about how to take care of vines or anything. So we were starting from ground zero. Is not something I would necessarily recommend for people to do, but the impression from the Lord was so strong that it was like, I got to do this. It was, I had to do it, and I had to do it quickly, and so we kind of just jumped in with both feet. And 2012 was our first growing season, and we have 5 different varietals, but one of our varietals, which was our Blanc du Bois, produced enough grapes in 2013 that I had a decision to make. Either I was going to sell the grapes to somebody else, or we were going to process the grapes ourselves. And when I looked at the cost, I said, "Gee, it's a wash as far as the cost is concerned from either having somebody else crush the grapes and make the wine, or if I make it myself." So that kind of got us into the winemaking side of the business. And that wine that I made from those grapes, I submitted to an international winemakers competition and won a gold medal from it. And so that kind of reaffirmed that, hey, we were heading in the right direction, and the Lord apparently was in it. And so from that time in 2013, 2014. We expanded our operation in 2015 and installed some 1,000-gallon tanks and made a bunch of wine, and then started selling in 2016, but really didn't start promoting our wine until this year, 2017. And the first 6 months, we opened up our tasting room in 2017, and in January 2017. Pretty much nobody knew about us. So we weren't, some people were coming by a little at a time, but it was like nobody was really, coming and coming to our winery, coming to our tasting room and actually buying a lot of wine at least. But since that time, I hired a friend of mine actually that I met at Mercy Ships, and he became our sales and marketing guy, and together we kind of worked on a plan for kind of expanding the business. We started going to festivals. We went to one this weekend at Mount Vernon, and promoting our wine at festivals, and the traffic at our tasting room started to increase. Well, it's been increasing every month since pretty much the middle of the summer and the middle of the year. And it looks like that's going to be the trend from here on out. I mean, obviously, we're still trusting in the Lord with that, but that's kind of how the business how we got started in the winemaking business. And today we have 8 different types of wine. In another month we'll have another type of wine, and we're getting favorable responses from people. We have our wines in a restaurant down in Tyler, a very famous restaurant down in Tyler, and we've got our wines in Lindale, Texas, in a couple of the restaurants there, and one of the retail shops in Lindale called Southern Ground Bottling Company. That's a wine and beer specialty store. And we have our wines in a wine specialty store in Athens called Come and Take It. And so the business seems to be growing one step at a time, and we're certainly appreciative to the Lord that He's giving us favor with folks. Of course, that's one thing when you're in business. You ask, especially if you know the Lord, you constantly ask for favor. And I've been amazed at just the doors that He's opened even in this short period of time. So that's kind of our story. That's kind of how we got started, how we went from just receiving the Lord back in 1985 to a long journey, going full-time mission work, and then being pulled out of that to start this other business. And then kind of in the meantime, actually when we were in the Seattle area, got an opportunity to start doing a faith and science radio program every Tuesday morning on brokenroadradio.com. And so for the past 5 years, I've been doing that program with Jim Park, who is the station host and the station owner. And we have a dialogue where we'll delve into something related to science, and I'll explain the science behind it in terms that a layperson can understand, and then I'll bring it around not to an evolutionary point of view, but to a young Earth creation point of view. And so the evidence is overwhelming that the Earth is young, our universe is young. We haven't been here that long, and it is not, 13 billion years old that I remember Carl Sagan, his program, The Cosmos, and he would say, the billions and billions of years. Well, guess what? The universe isn't billions and billions of years old. It's the information and the evidence all supports that this universe, the Earth that we live on, even people, everything, it's a young Earth and it's a young universe. So that's our story.
All right. Well, what have you learned through starting this vineyard? And I mean, I know there's so much that compares the grapes and not putting the new wine in old wineskin and stuff like that. Is there any proverbs basically that have come out of what you've been doing with the winery?
Oh, well, there are, obviously there's a lot of verses related to the vineyards, and Jesus himself said, "I'm the vine, you are the branches." And you have to be pruned. You have to be pruned to bear fruit. And you don't really get an appreciation of what that verse really means until you have a vine or you have a fruit tree or something, and you realize that, hey, if I don't prune this thing is not going to produce fruit. And not only that, with vines, grapevines, for example, It's the new shoots that come up, like this year, the new shoots that have come up. You prune those back till you've got 2 buds left on the vine, and that usually takes place in late winter, right before spring. And then those 2 buds will produce the shoots for the next year. Well, the old wood may also produce shoots, but the old wood will not produce fruit. The fruit only comes from 1-year-old wood. So the growth, the parallel with our Christian walk, for example, is that the growth that you've made this year in your Christian walk, Jesus is going to come and he's going to prune that back, and so that you can produce even more fruit the next year. And that's the same way, with our vines. And then, of course, in the winery, for example, how do you get the juice? I mean, how are you actually going to produce wine from these grapes, the cluster of grapes that you have? And so we have a machine that's called a destemmer crusher, and it literally takes the berries, the grape berries, off the stems, and it crushes the grapes. You need to crush the grapes in order to get the juice out. And with the reds, it's a slightly different process. You take what's called the must, which is the crushed grapes and the juice. You throw that in a vat, you get the fermentation going, and with the reds, the fermentation is done on the skins and with the seeds, because the skins have the color of the wine and this as well as the tannins. So you get the color and the tannins out of the skin and out of the seeds, which produces a different product than, for example, a white. A white, you take the must, you take the crushed grapes, and then you press the grapes, and you just get the juice out of that, and so that's why it's in quote a white wine, or a golden, a light straw-colored wine, or a red wine, depending on the process. But the first step in the process is to crush the grapes. And so, it's like us. I mean, we can't get our fruit out, we can't get the juice out unless we are crushed. Sometime in the process, you got to be crushed in order to produce, the fruit, in order to be able to, kind of work, if you will, in the kingdom of God. So we need the trials and the tribulations of life in order to help us mature in the Lord, and also help us to be more fruitful for the kingdom of God.
So instead of people whining and complaining that they, are going through a hard time, they should just be saying, "I'm being pruned."
Exactly. And actually, we should, as Paul said, we should count it all joy, for the trial and the tribulations that we're going under, because we know at the end of the road, we will have not only a closer relationship with the Lord, but maybe, if you have a ministry, or if you're feeling like you're in a desert place, for example, that through that trial, there will be much more fruit produced at the end of it than had you not gone through it. So it's absolutely critical that we have these periods of dryness, or that we have these times when we're saying, I don't know where the Lord is. He doesn't seem to be around. I'm not getting any words from the Lord. I'm not getting anything from the Lord. Those in my life seems to be just one struggle after the next. Well, okay, you can have an attack from the enemy, and you need to take authority over that. But also, God may be working in your life so that he's working out, he's kind of purging you, burning you, if you will, of some stuff that you just need to get rid of. And the only way that we sometimes realize that is if we go through these hard times and we're saying, we finally come to the end of ourselves, and then we allow God then to work through us. And then, when we do that, it's like, oh, gee, all the trials are gone. What happened here? And then, you know, we have opportunities to share the gospel, for example, with other people, or the door seems to be opening in other areas of our lives. So, being able to to be crushed and to go through trials and tribulations is absolutely critical.
Well, even if you don't go through something, it's really hard to have compassion or share with somebody else that's going through something you know nothing about.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah. So, all right. Well, Julie, is there anything that you would like to ask?
I just thought it was kind of interesting. Sitting here thinking that growing up in the Napa Valley, I have an understanding about an ideal climate, what they're looking for. And I know that you started this winery or this vineyard in the biggest drought that we had in how many years?
Oh, 100 years. It was a 100-year drought.
Yeah, so I was sitting there, I was kind of smiling while you were talking about it, because I was sitting there thinking, going, well, talk about leap of faith and believe in God, because we weren't having any rain.
No, we didn't have any rain, and we water our vines when they need water. Of course, we didn't need it this year, but in years past, out of our pond. Well, in 2011, that pond completely dried up, and there was nothing. There was not a drop of water in it, and we're planting a vineyard, which takes a lot of water. And so, yeah, it was big. You know, for me, it wasn't really a big leap of faith, because I knew that God told us to do this and that we were supposed to do it. We're still trying to figure out why He wanted us to do it, but it was definitely, anybody in their right business mind would say, you folks are crazy, absolutely crazy to be doing this, you know, when you don't even have any water to water these vines. Well, you know, the Lord works in wonderful ways, because that year, of course, ended the drought. It was a multi-year process, and by 2011, of course, it peaked, and the rain started coming. It was like we planted, we got our vines in, and the rain came. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that the Lord waited until our vines were in the ground, but it was. And then the pond filled up, and it's never been low again, much less dry, you know, since that point.
Maybe that was just part of your pruning, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Don, I guess, you know, on that note, we will end, but would you tell them a little about your, you know, how to get a hold of you, your website, you know, any information you want to give them, and then we'll also post that on the different sites. But
sure. Well, our web address is valladelapace.com. Now, let me spell it for you, because unless you're Italian, you probably don't know how to spell it. So it's VALLEDELLAPACE. So VALLEDELLAPACE.com. And, oh, by the way, Valle della Pace means Valley of the Peace. So we live in Garden Valley, and I had the peace of God come over me when we made this decision. So that's where the name comes from. So if you don't remember anything else, you can remember Valley of the Peace, and then put that in your Google translator for Italian, and then you'll come up with our name, Valle della Pace. So that's our website. Our Facebook page is also Valle della Pace. If you just put in Valle della Pace, you'll get our Facebook page as well. So that's we have a description of our operation on our website. There is a page, of course, a shopping cart where you could go to if you want to order the wines on our website, or stop by the winery, and from Wednesday through Saturday, we're open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you can stop by the winery, and of course We'll love to do a tasting with you, and if you enjoy our wines, maybe take home a bottle or two. So like I said, we also have our wines in a retail store in Lindale as well as Athens, Texas.
Oh, fantastic! All right, well, I guess I'll say that's a wrap. If you'll hang on a second, we'll talk after. And that's it.
I'm no longer a slave to fear.
Real Cuff Radio is about to
I
begin.
am a child of God. I'm no
Everybody
longer
loves a hero.
slave to fear.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
I am a child.
This afternoon, we will be interviewing the owners and operators of Della, Vineyards and Winery. Stay tuned for the show. Welcome to Real Cup Radio. And this evening, we have the owner and operator of award-winning winery and vineyard called Della, and his name is Dr. Don Clark. Dr. Don Clark, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Todd. Our winery, actually our business is called Villa della Pace. It means Valley of the Peace in Italian, and so we can talk a little bit about how we got started with that, and we can talk a little bit about how I came to know the Lord in the first place.
Let's start with that first, and then we will go into